to the People of Color Living with Diabetes Virtual Summit. I am so excited to finally be sitting down and having this conversation with you. Brandon, how are you doing this evening?
Doing great. How about you?
I can't complain. I cannot complain. Thank you so much for being one of our featured speakers for the first annual POCLWD Summit. Please tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
My name is Brandon A. Denson. I'm originally from Ypsilanti, Michigan, about 25 minutes outside of Detroit. And I currently live in San Diego, California. And I've been living with type 1 diabetes a little over 16 years now.
Wow. I had no idea you were in San Diego. I guess I knew you were on a different time zone, but you cannot, that East Coast accent, it goes nowhere. So obviously you have not been living in San Diego long, but thanks so much for hanging out with me tonight. Let's get right into it. People want to know about your experiences as a Black man living with diabetes in America, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about your personal experiences. Let's start with your diagnosis.
So my diagnosis started in 2004. I was going into my senior year of high school. There was a lot on my plate. Undecided about what university I wanted to go to. I still wanted to play football at the next level. And, you know, the main thing coming from where I grew up at, I didn't know anybody else that had this disease. You know, I knew other people, far as friends, teammates, schoolmates, like their aunts and uncles had it, but it was type 2. And I didn't have anybody that I could really relate to. So I kind of just took it as a badge of honor, just out the gate, that, you know, I promised my mom that I'm going to be fine. We're going to be fine. No matter what happens, you know, she took it very, very harsh. And like any parent would, you know, their child is going through something, their baby is going through something, and, you know, they can't do anything about that. But, you know, I made that promise to my mom that, you know, I wasn't going to let this stop me. And, you know, I'm definitely living proof of that. And not just to prove it to myself, but to prove it to other people that you can ultimately do whatever it is that you want to do.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was so important that we highlighted you as one of our speakers for this year, because of some of those things that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. But I want to talk about your diagnosis specifically. One of the things we've been hearing from a lot of the speakers involved in the summit this year is that diabetes stigma, or that shame that comes with the diagnosis. Did you experience any of this with your family or with your friends?
No, there was no shame on my behalf, or I don't think even from, you know, my family's. You know, it was just one of those things. It was like, look, this is what's going on, and this is what we have to do so we don't incur any complications. Nothing's off the table. Things are going to be different, but you're no different than anybody else. And, you know, and that's something that I embraced from the very beginning. I've always been a little different, a little weird. So me, you know, having to take shots, or, you know, plugging up my insulin pump, those things never bothered me. You know, I never was ashamed or scared. It was like, this is who I am, and this is what comes with it. But type 1 diabetes doesn't define me or what I'm capable of doing.
Oh, wow. I love that. I'm going to quote you on that later as well. So tell me a little bit about your healthcare experiences. So what were your experiences being initially or newly diagnosed, navigating through the healthcare system?
I would say it wasn't super bad in the very beginning, just because I was under my parents' insurance. And then when I went to school at Michigan State, because I played football, I was taken care of by the team. And then I also saw an endocrinologist and a CDE at Sparrow Hospital. So they took really, really good care of me. And then when I played professionally as well, I still had that, you know, that pretty tight network of healthcare professionals, and then obviously my endocrinologist and my CDE, and then my trainers from those teams that I played on. So I had really, really good care. One thing that I did notice once I stopped playing is it was a little different. You know, it was a little challenging making sure that I had a job where I had full benefits to cover the things that I needed. Obviously, we're talking insulin pumps, we're talking CGMs, we're talking insulin. These are very, very important pieces to this puzzle to make me operate at a high optimal level every single day. And not just me, I think millions of other people that don't have access to them, it's very important that they have access to these things too.
Wow. So you mentioned a lot there. So let's talk about some of these devices. So when did you realize or become aware that you had these options as far as different therapy options, insulin pumps, CGMs, and so on and so forth? Is this something that just kind of came, you've always been exposed to because you were an athlete?
So I'll say right out the gate, when I was diagnosed, I was at the University of Michigan Hospital, which that is a rival for me because I played at Michigan State. But their healthcare system is awesome, and they took really, really good care of me when I was diagnosed, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But I remember one of the nurses saying something about an insulin pump, which at that time I had no clue. That was my first day understanding my diagnosis, exactly what was going on, trying to learn everything that I could. And they were like, "Yeah, there's a machine, and you type in the number of carbs that you're eating, and it gives you the insulin." And I was like, "Oh, sign me up! I want that right now." They said, "Well, you can't get that today, and we like our patients to live with diabetes for at least a year." Which nowadays is completely different. I've seen people go on a pump in about 7 days after diagnosis, which is crazy, but I do understand it. But that shows you how great the technology is to kind of help you live that best life with type 1 diabetes.
Wow. We're seeing now statistics shows that there's not as much pump usage in Black people as there are in white people. What do you think about that? Do you think they're not being afforded the opportunity? Do you think they don't have the access? They really don't have the knowledge, or they're not getting the information? What do you think that is the reason?
Wow. After hearing everything that you just said, I think it's all of the above. I think not having access to it, not having healthcare insurance that covers what they need. We just have to figure out, how do we educate them? How do we get them to change the things that they're doing? I think having access to, insulin pumps and, I think CGMs, it's important for everybody to have access to these things if they're going to help us out. And I think it shouldn't just be one specific target that's able to get them, because if this target audience needs them and it helps them out, it probably will help this target audience out as well. And I think that's something we have to kind of figure out. How do we get people, or how do we get these people these devices that need them as well?
And that's so well said. And I think, that's one of the overall goals of this summit, right? Is to expose people to this type of information. There are people in certain pockets of the country that don't know what an insulin pump is, that don't know what a CGM is. And so let's not assume that everybody does. If we could take a step back and actually talk about these devices and this technology that's actually changed your life. And then also I want to talk a little bit about, how would you say these devices have helped improve your life? So tell us, first of all, what is an insulin pump, and then what is a CGM, and how do they improve your life?
Okay, so this little joker that I wear on my hip right here, obviously it has to have insulin in there and do what it's supposed to do. But I would say, for me, it's been the biggest, one of the biggest steps up from taking shots, because when I was in college, it allowed me that flexibility. I ate a lot in college. I was on a strict routine, strict regimen. So we're talking eat in the morning, go lift, eat again, go to class, eat again, go to another class, go to practice, eat again. So we're talking about all these times that I have to eat, whether it's a snack or a meal, I have to take a shot. It gives me that flexibility with the pump that I can type in the number of carbs that I'm eating, and then I get the insulin. It can be an inconvenience sometimes carrying around. At that time, I was 17, 18 years old. I'm carrying around a bottle of insulin, a syringe. Those can be, you don't want to do that all the time. And some people are completely fine with it. But for me, it was just, I felt that me having an insulin pump was like the icing on the cake for me. So when I was able to get one, I hopped right on it.
Wow. And then tell us about CGM. Is this a device that you wear?
Yes, it is. It is a device that I wear. So I wear the 670G insulin pump by Medtronic, and then I also wear the Guardian 3 sensor, and that allows me to go into auto mode.
Wow. I can see how it can be so much more just easier to go through life if you don't have to take those devices around, with you every day. You don't have to worry about, like you said, the vials of insulin, the syringes, and then also, what are you going to put that in? And like you said, you were 17, 18 years old, eating 20 times a day. That's nice. Working out several times a day. Let's talk about how life with diabetes was while you were playing sports.
Man, there's no one word to sum that up, but I guess if I had to pick one, it'd probably be complicated, to say the least. A lot of things that my trainers didn't know that I went through, a lot of things that I went through, my coaches didn't know, a lot of things that my family member and even my teammates. And, it made things a lot more complicated, but they never saw that, and it wasn't that because the diabetes was poorly managed or anything like that. It's just that when you're diabetic, you have on average, you have 180 things that are going through your head differently than somebody else, and obviously being high with a high blood sugar, low blood sugar, I think trying to perform or do anything, it can be challenging. It can be challenging just getting out of the bed if you're high or low, you know what I mean? Depending on how high you are and how low you are. But just imagine doing that under the terms of being a Division I athlete, student athlete, going to class, going to practices, going to film, going to training sessions, weightlifting sessions, on top of being a type 1 diabetic, on top of being a student, on top of being an athlete. So it's all these different layers that are stacked on top of each other. And, just one of those things, it's like a mind over matter. And that's just kind of how I had to approach it. There were no excuses. And I would never tell anybody if they're in an unsafe situation not to step back, because that's, first and foremost, that's what you should do. And the people that are around you should understand that, whether it's coaches, family members, teammates, friends, they should fully understand that. But I will say there was only one time out of 5 years that I had to step away from a workout, and my coach completely understood. But, that's a lot of practices being a type 1 diabetic. There are people that miss more practices that don't have diabetes. And, I'm very thankful that, I only had to miss one practice, and it wasn't something super crazy. It's just I had a really, really low blood sugar, and it just didn't make sense to work out.
Wow. So I like the fact that you say, be safe first, put safety first.
Yeah.
I'd like to also ask, what advice do you have for anybody that has diabetes, that is considering playing sports or that is playing sports? You've got to be able to look at yourself where you are now in your life and then kind of look back then, which sounds like a very crazy, hectic, and like you said, complicated time of your life. What advice would you give your younger self that could be beneficial to somebody that's watching this segment now?
I will say probably the most important thing is that something that I didn't do because I didn't think it was important. I didn't really reach out to anybody because I guess, one, I didn't know. So I didn't know anybody at school, even though it's 45,000 people going there. I didn't know any other type 1 diabetics. And then when I did find out one, she was an athlete, we became really cool. And it was pretty cool to know somebody else that was a diabetic, because not only was she an athlete, she was a student athlete. And, we had a lot in common, so that was really cool. But what really got me involved in getting involved in the diabetes community is a kid by the name of Nate Bob. He got me involved. He wrote me a letter. It was my sophomore year, and I got to my locker and I had a letter in there and I read it, and it just hit me. It hit me like, I was like, I felt that. And I was like, I have to do more. I felt, nobody told me I had to do anything, but I was like, I have to do more. Like that this kid, 13-year-old kid, can write me this letter. It's like, I have to do more. There are no excuses. So from that day on, I got involved with him through JDRF. And then I also got to know his family, and his family was like my family away from my family at home, even though it was only an hour and a half away. But, his mother would check on me. He would check on me. And, I would check on him, make sure school was going good, make sure diabetes was going good, make sure sports were going good. So it was kind of cool to be able to connect with somebody, because I felt like I was talking to my younger self, if that made sense. I wanted to guide him on that right path, even though I had only been living with diabetes for at that point 2 to 3 years. The fact that I inspired him to write a letter, it just made me realize like this is way bigger than me, way bigger than me.
Wow. You said like three things right there that I've heard among so many of the speakers that we've had for this year. And that's one, I thought I was the only person. I didn't know anybody else, that had diabetes. Two, support is so key, and I think because you thought you were alone and you didn't know anybody else that was going through the same things, you just didn't tell anybody else about it. But looking back on it now, you realize how important that support is and that support system. And then three, it sounds like the passion and your reasoning behind why you're so vocal about living out loud with diabetes is because one, you didn't have, anybody that was kind of there paving the way for you. And then two, you have people like the young gentleman that you just talked about that have really inspired you to continue to do this work. Let's transition now and talk about, you being a Black man in America and living with diabetes. Tell me, have you experienced any stigma, any shame, or anything that would be helpful for someone that's watching and viewing this segment as they try to navigate the healthcare system or just navigate living with diabetes in general?
I would say the biggest stigma that I get is like, you don't look like you have diabetes. I literally just got this other day. And, I was explaining to a gentleman, it was a security guard. And, obviously you can see my insulin pump on my hip. He had a couple questions and things like that. But, I was like, well, what does it mean? Like, what do you mean that I don't look like I have diabetes? Like, well, you look fit. And I was just like, man, you know what? Type 1 diabetes doesn't discriminate against if you're Black, if you're white, if you're short, if you're tall. Like, it doesn't matter where you're from. Like, this is just something that I have, and I'd be lying. Like, it sucks to have diabetes, but it could be so much more worse than what it is, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for the road that I've been able to travel and the road that I'm going to continue to travel. It's not easy, but if it was easy, everybody could do it, But I would say another stigma that kind of stands out, I guess it's not really a stigma, but it's just like people be like, oh, you got diabetes? And it's almost like it's like impossible for a Black man to have diabetes or type 1 diabetes or to be fit and have diabetes or to have played sports at a collegiate level or professional level and have diabetes. It's just like, how did you do it? And it's just like, for me, it's just like one of those things, like if somebody tells you no, does it really mean no? You know what I mean? It may mean no, but if the mindset is like, okay, I lost the game, it's like, okay, then I need to improve. I need to get better. And that's kind of like the approach that I take with the diabetes. Like, you have great days and you have not so great days. But I think the approach is like, can I make yesterday better? Can I make today better than yesterday? And that's kind of like the approach that I like to take.
You said something that I often hear a lot, and I actually was talking to one of our other speakers about, people are under the assumption that diabetes has a certain look, right? Or that, you have a certain body composition and those people have type 2 or type 1 diabetes, but somebody that's young and fit and trim and buff, like those people don't have diabetes. You mention or you commonly refer to yourself as the face of diabetes. Matter of fact, it's kind of, I've seen it on your Instagram, and I love the fact that you use that, the face of diabetes. So tell me why you kind of use that phrase and what does that mean? And what's the message that you're trying to get out by referring to yourself as the face of diabetes?
Well, I'll say that the first thing is that I want to let you know without you having to find out. And I think for me, that's one of those things when you say, were you ashamed? How did you feel? I'm gonna let you know from the gate. This is a part of me, but it doesn't define me or what I'm capable of doing. That's the first thing. So I'm gonna tell you that I am the face of diabetes because I believe I am the face of diabetes. And some people look at it like, well, okay, but if you haven't traveled in my shoes and done what I've done, then nobody can say that I'm not the face of diabetes. And that's how I embrace it. I embrace it as, we all travel our own separate paths in life, but we also travel our own separate paths living with diabetes. And for me, I feel like I'm the face of diabetes, you know, and I want people to know that this is what one particular type 1 diabetic looks like. But there are millions of us that don't look like me, and there's millions of us that do look like me, you know, and I think that's important for people to know.
Wow, you're kind of flipping things on, you know, doing a total 360 where it's customary for a person that has diabetes to not say anything about it. Basically, what you're saying is, here, I'm putting it out in your face. I have diabetes, but as you can see, it's not stopping me from doing anything. I love that. And I love that approach as well.
It gives me a way to, just out the gate, if anybody has any questions, because what you find out, some people, they won't talk about it, or, you know, until they're asked a question or whatever. But for me, it's like, I want to put it out there. So if you have any stigmas, or you have any stereotypes, or you have anything that's going on with that, I want to be able to educate you and bring awareness about what I live with every day. So you have a fully clear understanding of, this is how things are done. There is no science to, in my opinion, there is no science to diabetes. It's an art. It's an art.
Wow. I love that. I love that statement. Okay, Brandon, so let's transition a little bit now. I want to talk about the advocacy work that you do in the diabetes arena. I know you have a clothing line, Society 77, I believe it is what it is. Talk to us a little bit about that and any other type of projects that you've got in the works as it relates to diabetes advocacy.
So Society 77 is an apparel line. It is pretty much based around diabetes. And, you know, I look at a lot of things. Being a Black male, I do know that fashion is important, you know, coming from our culture and things of that nature. So probably about 2.5 years ago, I had an idea, actually with the kid that I used to mentor. He's not a kid anymore, but we were having a conversation on, you know, some things that we could possibly do. And I was like, you know what, I think, you know, having an apparel line would be kind of cool. So the idea behind Society 77 is not only to bring awareness about diabetes, but it's to show you that we can bring the community together through our passion for fashion. So it's pretty much, that's how we bring the diabetes community together. We have stuff for people that have type 1 diabetes, that have type 2 diabetes, and also caregivers of people with diabetes. So our main goal is to bring the diabetes community together through our passion for fashion.
I love that. And we'll make sure to put a link to that website at the bottom of the video as well, so that people can check that out as well. So you've got a podcast. I know it just started. Tell me a little bit about the podcast, your co-host, and kind of what are your goals with the podcast?
So just recently started a podcast. It's the Bolus Maximus podcast. My co-host, Matthew Terrell, he's also a type 1 diabetic. And our goal is to inspire people, motivate, and share stories, because, like I said earlier, there is no one road that we all travel living with this disease. And, you know, it's very cool, but also very unique to hear individuals tell their stories, because we've all been diagnosed at different times. We've all come from different backgrounds. We all look different. We all have experienced different things during our process of living with type 1 diabetes, or diabetes in general. And our focus is on sharing these stories that we're able to capture and just share them worldwide. So you can find the podcast, Bolus Maximus, on all your major platforms. You can find it on Apple. You can find it on Spotify. It's on Pandora. Any major platform, you can find it. And, you know, hopefully if you're watching this, you'll take a listen, and hopefully we have some content on there that you will like.
Wow. So I have to say, the nurse in me loves the title of the podcast, Bolus Maximus. I just have to ask though, how did you come up with that name? Whose idea was it? Tell me the story behind the name of that podcast.
So my co-host, Matthew Terrell, we were just kind of brainstorming some ideas, but I'll have to honestly say that was all him. You know, we wanted to kind of go with the B and the M. Obviously, my name is Brandon. His name is Matthew. But he came up with the brilliant idea of, you know, I don't know a lot of people if they know about an insulin pump, but there is a option on there that says max bolus, and that's the maximum amount of insulin that you could give yourself in one particular setting, which I believe is 25 units, which is a lot of insulin, depending on what you're eating. But we kind of took that and we wanted to kind of incorporate something from diabetes, but then also with our name, and then kind of sandwich the two together. But also, I think Maximus is like very, very strong. And that's what we are in the diabetes community. We're strong, resilient individuals, and that's what you end up with Bolus Maximus.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad I asked that question because I was not expecting that great of an answer, but I love that. Kudos to your co-host. Love that name. So Brandon, before we leave today, and this has been a great conversation, I'm so excited for the viewers to really hear your story and all of your advice that you share with us. Please tell us, what's that one piece of advice that you would give to someone that's newly diagnosed, to the athlete with diabetes, to the person of color that's living with and managing diabetes? What's that one piece of advice that you wish someone would have given you? What would you share with them?
You know what? I'll backtrack on what you said. I wouldn't probably even want anybody to tell me anything, because I don't know if it would have made a difference. Because in my mind, when I was in that hospital and I saw my mom crying, as much as she wanted to do something for me, I wanted to do something for her, because I didn't want to see those tears running down her eyes. And from then, I just told myself, I took diabetes like it was my football, and I just ran with it. And I said, I'm not going to let anything get in my way. So if I could tell anybody anything, with diabetes or without diabetes, first and foremost, it would be never let anyone tell you that you can't do something, no matter what it is. And we live with diabetes, but it doesn't define who we are or what we're capable of doing. I'm going to repeat that. We live with diabetes, but it doesn't define who we are or what we're capable of doing. And I mean that.
Wow. And I couldn't say it any better. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Denson, the face of diabetes. Brandon, thank you so much for being our featured speaker for the first annual People of Color Living with Diabetes Virtual Summit. I look forward to connecting with you very, very soon.
Thank you.
If you're living with diabetes and take insulin every day, an insulin pump can be a great tool to help you manage your insulin and blood sugar levels.
When my doctor presented it to me, I was like full gung-ho. Something has to be better than how I'm living my life now. And I did not hesitate for 2 seconds. I was like, let's do this.
An insulin pump is a small device that mimics some of the ways a healthy pancreas works, delivering continuous and customized doses of rapid-acting insulin 24 hours a day to match your body's needs. Insulin pump therapy has been clinically proven to lower A1C levels.
Let's talk about blood sugar levels. Blood sugar levels that on a daily basis was 200 or more have gone down to between 87 and 140. Let's talk about A1C levels. My A1C level is 7.6. I've never had a 7 A1C level as long as I can remember.
Medtronic offers trained and dedicated staff that are available 24/7 to assist and answer questions, an online community, and other resources to make getting started easy.
I was a little bit nervous, and I don't know if I could do this. But, she reassured me, and she did not leave me until I was able to do that first exchange by myself. And I was like, I can do this. I have been doing so much more, have a very positive outlook on things that I can do, and being able to live my best life.
An insulin pump may help you spend more time enjoying life and less time managing your diabetes. To see if insulin pump therapy is right for you, talk to your doctor or visit medtronicdiabetes.com for more information.